I used to judge people who move back home in their 30s. I moved back in with my mom at the age of 32, and quite honestly, this is not how I pictured my life. Loser! I really felt like a failure. But now at 34 and after living here for a year, I do see it slightly different. Let me back up. I finally made the decision to move back home in June of 2024. But in order for you to understand why I made that decision, I have to take you back to 2022. I felt the weight of grief and burnout because of other things that were happening in my life at the time. And so when I made the decision to leave my job, I was literally at my wit's end. I decided to solo travel for a bit, and when I thought I was going to go back to work, I lost it. I had almost lost my mind. And so I left. I decided to start freelancing. Then freelancing didn't work out as well as I thought it would. The first 8 months were fine. I had a great contract and I thought I would be able to pick up another one, and that didn't happen. In consulting, it was easy for me to sell myself because there was always a project, there was always something, and I thought that I could carry that over into freelancing. And when I realized how hard it was to pick up contracts, to pick up clients, I quickly began to understand that the world that I thought I lived in was not the same as what it is with a company. Although it wasn't completely different, there were things that I had to learn quickly that I did not understand before leaving my 9 to 5. I also felt like I was outgrowing the DMV area. Although I loved the friends I made along the way and the hobbies that I picked up, I started to feel as if this place just wasn't for me any longer. The funny thing is, I never had any intention of living in or near the DC area whatsoever, but it's where I ended up when I got my first job. At the time, I was living in my condo that I had just bought 5 years prior, and my condo started to feel small to me. It was a 1 bedroom. By the time I bought it, I had outgrown it. Not only did I outgrow these places and outgrow my home, but I was also living off of my savings, living off of credit cards, and had dug myself into this immense amount of debt. So while part of me felt like I didn't have a choice, another part of me just knew that it was time for a reset. On paper, it made sense, but emotionally, that's where it hit me. I felt ashamed. I felt like I failed. I hadn't lived at home since I was 18 years old, and I swore I'd never come back. My dad gave us 3 choices: go to school, go to the military, or get a job. I chose to go to school, and then after that, vowed to never return home.
Okay, girl, pause, because this sounds very dramatic. Yes, I chose to go to school. Yes, my dad said those things because that is how he grew up. My dad was a very daddy's girl kind of dad. So he knew the military wasn't for me, and he knew I wasn't getting a job because I was destined to go to school.
In my head, independence equaled success. Moving home meant I had lost, that I did not succeed, meant that I was unable to take care of myself and unable to live on my own. Moving home meant that I hit rock bottom, that I was crawling back on my knees and begging my mom to let me in the door. Now, is that completely true? No. My mom had always told us that we could come back home at any time. But in my mind, I went crawling back. I used to judge people who moved back home in their 30s, and now I was forced to confront my own judgment and vow. What I didn't expect was how heavy it would feel, how depressed it might make me, how the weight of that judgment would affect me later on. And that is when it started to sink in. I was home, and during all this time, not only am I confronting my own judgments, but I'm realizing that my expectations were not matching up with reality. I had expected to be able to start fresh, to find a job quickly, to move out in 6 months, and to restart my life socially, to maybe get back on track physically. And none of that happened. The reality is I stayed home for a year, tried my hardest to apply to a bunch of different jobs, and got rejected from nearly all of them. I could go on and on about how the economy looks, but I'm sure that most of us know what's going on. The reality is that I have been at home for a year, and now it's not just my mom and I. It is my mom, my sister, my niece and nephew, and 2 dogs. So the house is crowded, to say the least. Of course, moving came with a whole set of new challenges. Before my sister moved back, I was still in transition mode, dealing with rejection from different jobs, downsizing my condo, my 1-bedroom condo, to 1 room, and adjusting to the rhythm of another person living in the home. And then when my sister joined, I quickly had to transition to the kids' energy. There was one time when my mom said to me, "There's energy in the house now, Tyler. It's different." And that was a representation of what it felt like to go from not having any kids in the house at all to now having 2 kids, 2 dogs. There's more noise, more movement, and less privacy. There's a sense of a loss of independence. And because I did not have a job at the time, I'm still unlearning and still reshaping what independence looks like to me. There was also the challenge of feeling behind compared to my peers, those who might be getting married, having kids, buying homes. And I know you shouldn't compare yourself to others, but I'm not going to lie and say I didn't do it. Of course I did, especially to those around me. Lastly, as an introvert, it is much harder to have alone time with kids who do not care about whatever you got going on. I love my niece and nephew, but they bust in my door 10 times a week, if not more. But even with all of that, the challenges, the stigmas, the judgments, the expectations, the reality, the weight, there have been real blessings that have come out of this time. I lost my father in 2019 and my mom had a stroke in 2023. I was afraid that I would become an orphan in a sense. And so being able to spend this time with my mom after her stroke has truly been one of the more special times in my life. I sold my condo, paid off my credit card debt, and now I have some breathing room to do some other things financially that I wouldn't have been able to do had I not taken the leap and moved and sold my condo. Not only have I been able to see my mom differently and heal some old wounds, but I've been able to experience daily life with kids, realizing what parenthood might mean for myself. I've been able to reconnect with my childhood best friend. And my mom and I have had countless conversations about this rut that I'm in. And she's reminded me of who I truly am. I think at one point in my career, I got very lost and wrapped up in making money and identifying with the career version of myself. But then I quickly had to realize that that wasn't me. And while that version of me still exists in some way, shape, or form, there was much more to me than my career or chasing money. This has also given me the time to spiritually reset. I listened to a talk that Myron Golden did the other day where he talked about confidence. And I knew the definition of confidence, but the way that he broke it down helped me to further understand what that word means and how I need to apply it to my life today. Confidence means trust in oneself, but Myron Golden adds that you should trust so boldly in what God has said about you that you rest in the essence of God's supremacy. It made me realize that doubting myself was doubting how God sees me, and that renewed my belief, not just in God, but in myself. Finding my true identity in Christ has truly allowed me to see me as God sees me, not as a workhorse, not as somebody who is constantly looking for affirmation or confirmation from those around me, but as a human that God made in His image. I've been able to do a time audit of my habits, realizing that I might have been slightly addicted to my phone. It also gave me the chance to reconnect with my childhood and reconnect with my creativity. I got back into therapy. I've been able to reset myself emotionally, confronting old judgments and vows that I made, healing wounds and past traumas from relationships, from work, from the loss of loved ones, to truly begin to practice self-love and self-care, especially when I have other responsibilities to take care of, which I probably couldn't have done living on my own. And lastly, I feel like I've been able to confront and begin to break some of the generational curses in my family, such as burnout and never slowing down. Really relishing in what it looks like to rest. At first, I saw moving home as failure, as a setback, but in reality, it's redirection. It's a setup for whatever the next chapter of my life is. And right now, in this time and space in my life, it is what healing and rebuilding looks like. So sometimes going back home or resetting isn't going backwards. It is replanting yourself in soil that can hold you until you're strong enough to regrow again. If you're also in your 30s and you've contemplated moving back home or you've had to move back home, it's not failure. See it as strategy. See it as a redirection, as a way for you to replant yourself, to reset, restructure, refocus, and heal. Cherish this time. Lean into the support. Take it as a chance to get clear on who you are. It's not the life that I thought I'd have at 34, but it is what I needed to become who I am meant to be. Finding my true identity in Christ is truly, nope, absolutely not today. Boogeyman won't about to get me. Absolutely not.